Hi, this is Dr. Greg Patterson, physical therapist, working primarily in home care, and I've developed a very simple exercise for my long COVID patients and just wanted to share it with other therapists, and I think you may find it helpful. It's a very simple technique. A lot of you may be like me. Your company doesn't provide good inspirometers. Many hospitals provide this to patients, but by the time they get home, these are often lost. And so I had to come up with some way to encourage my patients to work on their inspiration breathing exercises to increase their pulmonary capacity following COVID, and particularly those patients that are still suffering with long COVID. What I did started off with taking a simple Kleenex and having the patient hold it out at arm's length and simply blow. And this would give them basic biofeedback that they were blowing more forcefully as, of course, the Kleenex blew, upwards more. The other thing I would do is we would tape this onto a doorway threshold and have them stand 5 feet away, try to blow 4 or 5 times and try to make the Kleenex move, and then they would back up successively and they would get that feedback that, oh, I must be improving because I'm able to make the Kleenex move as I'm moving further and further away. Although that's not the best way to work on pulmonary capacity, it was effective and the biofeedback was very effective. As I started talking to colleagues, and particularly Dr. Ellen Hilligus, who reminded me I need to work as aggressively as possible on inspiration, I thought of another method that was a little fun and seemed to be engaging for patients, but worked on the inspiration component of their pulmonary capacity. So we start off by taking a regular index card, cut it into a couple small squares. Doesn't have to be exact here. You could start off with regular letter paper because that's going to be a little lighter weight. But I found that cardstock actually was a little more effective because of the stiffness of the paper and being able to accomplish what you're going to see me attempt to do. So I stayed 5 with everything just to keep it simple, and people seem to be able to stick with you for 5 repetitions. Simple drinking straw, you need the kind that's bendy, and all we do is ask the patient, try to pick the pieces of paper up and move them 4 or 5 inches on the table or whatever surface they're on. So here we go. And you get the idea. Now, unlike myself, who's recovered from COVID amazingly well, but still have some issues when I run, the one thing you'll see with patients, of course, they're struggling and continuing to have to inhale to try to lift the piece of paper. And I'll try to demonstrate. What we're after is that struggle where they're having to inhale for a longer period of time. That's the struggle that I found with several of the devices that they were issued from the hospital. And as I mentioned, like many of you, my home health company had a very poor option for inspiratory type devices. And so this was way more effective and the patients became much more engaged. Now the next phase is we move over to coins. And you might not be able to see this very well, but we have dimes, pennies, nickels, and quarters. And again, the objective is to hopefully create a situation that they have to inhale or extend that inspiration moment. Again, very straightforward and simple. I am able to do this without much trouble. What you'll find with your patients is they will actually have to inhale 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, maybe even 20 seconds to try to, I don't think they can get to 20, most of them with post-COVID or long COVID, but they breathe in longer, and they're very intent on trying to move the coin. So we start off with dimes. We move up to pennies because they're obviously a little bit heavier. Then we move to nickels, quarters, and I've even had some patients progress to using half dollars. Again, the motive, the objective here is to encourage longer inspiration time. And the thing that you may see that I saw with this and why it has worked so well for me is patients challenge me when I would come back from my follow-up visits to try to beat them and see how many pennies or dimes or nickels they could move versus myself. I even had one patient that made a tic-tac-toe grid, and we had to play tic-tac-toe with each other. And like I mentioned, the thing that I observed was they were getting much longer inspiration times, and they were engaged and did this 2-3 times a day, multiple times per week, much over using the issued inspirometers. The difference is with the inspirometer, of course, I could see a quantitative difference as they went from 500 milliliters to 800 to 1,000 and hopefully even higher. With this, I documented that they were moving up in coins which were varying weight, and I could have repetitions documented to show how many times they were doing it. They were progressing, as well as I would try to make a note of how long they were inhaling with each coin, and I could document that, showing progression from 3 or 4 seconds to eventually, hopefully, in the teens, and some patients even up to 20 seconds. The other thing that we found is that some patients that have a lot of kyphosis or posture issues, we could take the straw down to a shorter length, because if they were here, it was hard to use the straw in this position, and they were able to accomplish the same task. Once someone progressed, one thing that being a little tough on them to make it a little harder is we would take a regular straight pin. This is a safety pin. Heat it up. See if I can do this quickly. And then on the end of the straw, we would poke holes all in the very bottom of the straw. And what this did is, of course, created more air passages so that they had to work harder and work on the inspiration longer to lift the coin. And again, patients really got into this and they enjoyed the challenge. So I know I didn't get into the science behind what we're doing here, but this was very effective. The biggest benefit to my patients was they became very engaged. They found it a fun challenge, and still to this day, many patients challenge me, so I've had to up my game on my ability to use what we call the drinking straw coin game. So I hope you'll find this effective for some of your patients that may have early COVID, long COVID, or anyone who you're trying to improve their inspiration capacity and pulmonary capacity. And Dr. Hillegas, I'd appreciate any feedback on this, and thanks for your input early in the days of fighting COVID.